Did you know you need boredom in your life? That's right, you heard me. Boredom. That thing you avoid all the time. That uncomfortable feeling you get when you're waiting for the elevator and don't have your phone in hand. When you're in line at the bank with nothing to do. When you're at a red light and your hand automatically reaches for your device. Let me explain why boredom is actually one of the best things that can happen to you. Boredom is our tendency to not be mentally occupied with other things, which makes our thinking system switch to use a part of the brain called the default mode network. Sounds complicated, but it's not. The default mode network is basically a set of structures in your brain that activate when you don't have anything specific to think about. So you forgot your phone at home, and you're sitting waiting for your turn at the doctor's office, for example. That's when your default mode network turns on, and we hate it. Schopenhauer had already figured this out over 200 years ago. He said we live oscillating like a pendulum between two things, the suffering of wanting something we don't have, and the emptiness of having nothing to want. That emptiness? That's exactly boredom. And instead of learning to be comfortable with it, we do everything to run away. Nietzsche had an interesting test for this. He asked, if you had to live this exact moment forever, would you choose it? If you're constantly avoiding boredom, grabbing your phone every time you feel that emptiness, the answer is probably no. Jung understood something even deeper. He realized that when we avoid boredom, we're actually avoiding parts of ourselves. Those uncomfortable thoughts, those emotions we prefer not to feel, those questions about our life we'd rather not face. All of this comes to the surface when we stop distracting ourselves. And that's why this video might make you a little uncomfortable. Did you know your brain became a slot machine? I'm serious. Every time you pick up your phone, your neurons fire the exact same pattern that happens when someone pulls the lever on a gambling machine. It's what scientists call intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes you get a notification, sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's an interesting message, sometimes it's just spam. And that sometimes is exactly what creates the strongest addiction that exists. You trained your brain to crave uncertainty, to need stimulation just to feel normal. Schopenhauer had predicted exactly this in 1818. He said we would oscillate desperately between the boredom of having nothing to want and the suffering of wanting something we can't have. But he never imagined you could create this oscillation thousands of times per day. Each notification is a small spike of desire. Each scroll is a microdose of temporary satisfaction followed by immediate emptiness. You created a technological version of what he called the will to live, an infinite craving that can never be truly satisfied. Harvard researchers did an interesting experiment. They put people in a room for 15 minutes with nothing to do except a button that, if pressed, would give them a painful electric shock. Guess what happened? Most people chose to give themselves electric shocks rather than be alone with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. Let me repeat that. They preferred physical pain to mental quietude. That's how desperate we've become to avoid our own minds. And the worst part? You don't even realize this is happening. You think you're staying informed, connected, productive, but you actually killed your attention capacity with 1,000 small cuts. Now you can't read a book for 30 minutes. You can't watch a movie without picking up your phone. You can't have a conversation without your mind wandering to other things. You turned your mind into a ping-pong ball bouncing between distractions, never landing anywhere long enough to discover what you actually think about anything. Let me tell you something Schopenhauer discovered 200 years ago that perfectly explains why you feel empty, even having access to more entertainment than any previous generation. He said all life is suffering, not because he was pessimistic, but because he understood something fundamental about how our minds work. You suffer when you don't have what you want, and you get bored when you get what you wanted. There's no escape, no permanent satisfaction, no final happiness that lasts forever. But you thought you could hack this system with constant entertainment. Right now you're oscillating between two types of suffering. When you're scrolling on your phone, you're suffering from wanting more content, more stimulation, more distraction from the fundamental emptiness of existence. When you put your phone aside, you're suffering from boredom, the direct confrontation with that emptiness you've been avoiding. Think about it. If you were truly happy, truly at peace, would you need to be entertained every moment? Would you panic just thinking about being without your phone? Your need for constant entertainment is proof that you're in psychological agony. It's like a person scratching a wound. The scratching relieves for a second but makes the condition worse. Schopenhauer said the only way out of this cycle are moments of cessation of will, when you stop wanting, stop desiring, stop needing something, But you eliminated those moments from your life. You filled every gap, every pause, every moment of silence where this transcendence could happen. The illusion of happiness they sold you is killing you. Every moment of pleasure you seek in entertainment is just a brief pause between different types of pain. Schopenhauer would look at your Netflix queue, your Instagram feed, your podcast playlist, and see a desperate person running on a treadmill of suffering, convinced that the next episode will finally bring peace. It won't. It never will. Because you're trying to solve an existential problem with technological solutions. You turned your life into an uninterrupted scream of need. And then you wonder why you feel empty inside. Want to know the real reason why boredom terrifies you? Jung discovered something that will make you uncomfortable, but that you need to hear. In silence, when there's nothing to distract you, everything you rejected about yourself starts asking for attention. Your stored anger, your unprocessed sadness, your secret fears, your true desires that don't fit the image you want to project. Jung called this your shadow. All the parts of your personality you thought were unacceptable and pushed into the unconscious. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It stays waiting in the silence you desperately avoid. You were taught to believe you're only your conscious thoughts, only the person you show to the world. But Jung knew you're much bigger, much more complex, much darker than that clean and organized version. In boredom, when your defenses are down, your shadow speaks. And it says things like, "You're not as good as you pretend to be. You're angrier than you want to admit. You want things you're ashamed to want." It's terrifying. That's why you grab your phone. All that persona you maintain, the successful person, the happy person, the person who has everything under control, needs constant maintenance, constant performance, constant external validation. In boredom, when there's no audience to perform for, the mask starts slipping. And underneath you find aspects of yourself you've been running from for years. Maybe you discover you're not as kind as you thought. Maybe you realize you're carrying anger you didn't even know existed. Maybe you face desires that contradict everything you tell yourself about who you are. Jung said you only become psychologically whole by integrating your shadow, not acting destructively, but recognizing these dark parts as legitimate parts of your total being. But you can't integrate what you won't encounter. And you can't encounter your shadow if you're always running from the silence where it lives. Every time you choose stimulation over quietude, you're choosing to remain fragmented. You're choosing to be a partial person instead of facing the totality of who you really are. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the parts of you that you need to reclaim to become whole. But this reclamation requires courage to sit in the uncomfortable silence where your rejected selves are waiting. Most people prefer to stay fragmented rather than face this integration. The question is, what kind of person are you? Nietzsche had the most brutal test to know if you're really living or just pretending to live. He called it the eternal return. Imagine you had to live your entire life again, exactly as it is, infinite times, every moment checking your phone, every hour lost scrolling aimlessly, every time you ran from boredom to distraction. If you had to repeat this exact existence forever, would you choose it? If your answer is no, you're not living. You're just killing time until you die. Nietzsche saw your constant need for entertainment as life denial. You're so uncomfortable with existence as it is that you need to constantly escape from it. Every time you grab your phone when you're bored, you're saying, "This moment, as it is, isn't enough." But what if it is enough? What if the problem isn't the moment, but your capacity to be present with it? Nietzsche would look at your Netflix addiction, your social media compulsion, your podcast dependency, and see a person who never learned to say yes to life as it really is. You only know how to tolerate life when it comes mediated, filtered, processed, delivered as content. Nietzsche described 3 phases of consciousness development. First, you're a camel, carrying the weight of social expectations and external entertainment. Then you become a lion, destroying false values and creating your own meaning. Finally, you become a child, creating authentically from your own center. But you never left the camel phase. You're still carrying the weight of other people's content, other people's thoughts, other people's creativity. You consume instead of create. You react instead of act. You're entertained instead of being interesting. Nietzsche had a concept called amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting your circumstances, but actively loving them, finding them necessary for your growth. Can you love your boredom? Can you find it beautiful? Can you see it as raw material for transformation instead of a problem to solve? Most people can't. They see boredom as a mistake, as an inconvenience, as a sign that something's wrong. But what if boredom is exactly what should be happening? What if it's the universe giving you space to discover who you are when no one is telling you who to be? Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the person who creates their own values, begins with being able to be comfortable with discomfort, to sit with uncertainty, to find meaning in meaninglessness. Your inability to tolerate boredom shows how far you are from this ideal. You're not the master of your own experience. You're the slave of whatever algorithm happens to be feeding you content at the moment. Real power isn't having access to unlimited entertainment. Real power is not needing it. You shut off the most important function of your brain. Scientists call it the default mode network, the neural system that activates when you're not focused on the external world. It's what turns on during boredom, during moments when you're just existing. This is where all your insights happen. This is where you process difficult experiences. This is where you make sense of your life. This is where creativity is born. And you systematically eliminated this from your existence. When Schopenhauer wrote about transcendent moments, times when you stop wanting, stop desiring, stop being driven by need, he was describing exactly what we now know as default mode network activation. These are the moments when you're not trying to get anything from the world, not performing for anyone, not consuming content. You're just present with existence itself. Schopenhauer said these were the only truly peaceful moments possible for human beings. But you trained yourself to find these moments intolerable. Think about all your best ideas. I bet they came in the shower, walking, in those moments when you weren't actively thinking about anything specific. It's not coincidence. It's your default mode network finally getting space to function. When the system is active, different parts of your brain start talking in ways they can't when you're focused on external stimuli. Memories connect with current experiences. Patterns emerge from chaos. Solutions appear for problems you didn't even know you were solving. But this only happens in the absence of stimulation, and you eliminated that absence. Just like your body needs sleep to repair itself, your mind needs unstimulated time to process experiences, integrate what you learned, reorganize information. When you're constantly consuming content, your brain stays always in input mode. It never gets to switch to processing mode. So all these experiences just accumulate undigested, creating a kind of psychological constipation. That's why you can watch 1,000 videos and not remember anything important. Read 100 articles and not gain real wisdom. Listen to 12 podcasts and not have any new insights. Your brain didn't have time to process any of it. Your default mode network isn't just another neural system. It's the foundation of consciousness, creativity, psychological integration. When it's disrupted, which constant stimulation does, you lose access to your deepest mental capacities. You become intellectually shallow, emotionally reactive, creatively bankrupt. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you shut off the mental state where intelligence actually develops. The silent moments you desperately flee from are actually the most mentally productive moments you can have. But productivity of this type doesn't look like productivity. It looks like nothing. And apparently you'd rather feel like nothing is happening than feel nothing at all. Nietzsche's distinction between master mentality and slave mentality perfectly explains your relationship with technology. You think you're using your devices, but they're using you. You think you're choosing what to watch, but algorithms are choosing what you see. You think you're staying informed, but you're being programmed. You became a slave to stimulation and don't even realize it. Nietzsche distinguished between master morality, creating your own values from internal authority, and slave morality, accepting values imposed by external sources. Every time you let your phone decide how to spend your attention, you're choosing slave mentality. Pay attention to what happens when you can't check your device. Physical anxiety, mental agitation. You keep looking for the phone that isn't even there. These aren't character flaws. They're withdrawal symptoms. Your brain is literally craving its next dopamine hit, just like any addict craves their substance. But unlike other addictions, this one is socially acceptable, encouraged even. Here's how you start breaking free. But I'll be honest, you have to start small because going cold turkey will generate withdrawal so strong you'll give up. Tomorrow morning, don't check your phone for the first hour after waking up. Feel the discomfort. Notice how your mind gets restless. Observe the stories your head invents about why you need to check. Go to the gym without devices. No music, no podcasts, nothing. Just you, your body, your breathing, and whatever thoughts come up. Most people haven't been alone with their own mind during exercise in years. Take a walk without entertainment. Let your mind wander. See what comes up when there's nothing going in. Eat a meal in complete silence. No TV, no phone, no reading. Just you, your food, and the act of nourishment. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch begins with self-mastery. You can't master yourself if you can't master your own attention. And you can't master your attention if you can't tolerate the absence of external stimulation. Every moment you choose quietude over stimulation, you're choosing to be master instead of slave. You're choosing self-determination instead of algorithmic manipulation. Here are practical protocols that actually work. Create phone-free zones in your home. Your bedroom should be a sanctuary of silence. Institute digital Sabbaths. 1 day per week or at least 1 hour per day, completely offline. Replace stimulation habits with contemplation habits. Instead of checking your phone when you wake up, spend 10 minutes just observing your thoughts. Instead of scrolling when you're bored, sit with the boredom. Study it. Get curious. Let it teach you something. The goal isn't to eliminate all technology. It's to use technology consciously instead of being used by it unconsciously. Most people will hear this and do nothing. The question is, are you most people? Schopenhauer understood something that will change how you see boredom forever. He wrote about aesthetic experience, moments when you become so absorbed in pure perception that your sense of self temporarily disappears. No wanting anything, no desiring anything, no suffering. Just pure consciousness observing pure existence. These moments only happen in quietude, in boredom, in the spaces between thoughts that you're desperate to fill. Everything you think you are, your social identity, your professional role, your personality traits, needs constant maintenance through external validation and internal narrative. But in deep boredom, when there's no audience to perform for and no story to maintain, this constructed self starts dissolving. And this feels like death because, in a certain sense, it is death. The death of the person you thought you were. But what emerges from that death is who you really are. Jung understood that psychological wholeness requires integrating all aspects of yourself, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, rational and irrational. But this integration can't happen while you're distracted. It requires sustained attention to your inner world. It requires patience to sit with contradiction, with paradox, with the uncomfortable complexity of being human. In boredom, when your defenses are down and your masks are off, different aspects of your psyche can finally communicate. The angry part can talk to the peaceful part. The scared part can dialogue with the brave part. The ashamed part can be witnessed by the compassionate part. That's how you become whole, not by consuming more content about wholeness, but by creating space for wholeness to emerge naturally. What looks like empty time is actually the fullest time that exists. Because it's not full of other people's thoughts, other people's creations, other people's entertainment. It's full of you, your authentic thoughts, your original ideas, your genuine emotions, your real desires, your true self. But you have to be patient with this fullness. It doesn't announce itself with notifications. It doesn't grab attention with bright colors and loud sounds. It emerges quietly, gradually, naturally, like a plant growing. You can't see it happening moment by moment. But if you give it consistent space and attention, you'll eventually notice that something real has grown where there used to be nothing but distraction. Every wisdom tradition recognizes the necessity of silence, solitude, contemplation, not as escape from life, but as the foundation that makes authentic life possible. You can't know who you are if you're never alone with yourself. You can't hear your own voice if there are always other voices talking. You can't develop original thoughts if you're always consuming other people's thoughts. The boredom you're avoiding isn't punishment. It's invitation. An invitation to discover the person you've been too busy to meet. The person who's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise, all the stimulation, all the distraction. That person is still there, but they're only accessible through the door you're afraid to walk through, the door of your own unstimulated consciousness. The person you really are exists in the silence. Not the person you show on social media. Not the person you perform at work. Not the person you think you should be based on what others expect. The person you really are, With all your contradictions, all your complexity, all your unrealized potential, lives in the quiet spaces you're terrified to enter. The discomfort you feel in boredom isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. That restlessness, that anxiety, that desperate need for stimulation. These are signals pointing to the inner work you've been avoiding. The suffering isn't meaningless. It's information. Your psyche trying to tell you something important about what you really need for genuine satisfaction versus what you think you need. Most people interpret this discomfort as evidence that something's wrong. But what if it's evidence that something's finally right? What if the discomfort is your authentic self trying to break through the shell of distraction you built around it? Schopenhauer said, "Suffering is teacher." The discomfort of boredom forces you to confront truths you've avoided your whole life. Nietzsche challenges you. Will you choose courage or comfort? You have a choice right now. You can close this video, grab your phone, return to the familiar prison of constant stimulation. You can keep being a reactor instead of a creator, a consumer instead of an artist, a slave instead of a master. Or you can choose courage. The courage to sit with discomfort. The courage to be alone with yourself. The courage to discover who you are when no one is telling you. This isn't about becoming a monk or rejecting all technology. This is about becoming conscious, about choosing your attention instead of letting it be chosen for you, about creating space for your authentic self to emerge instead of drowning it in other people's content. Here's what I want you to do right now, before you do anything else. Turn off your phone, not silent mode, off. Put it in another room. Sit somewhere comfortable and do absolutely nothing for 10 minutes. No music, no TV, no book, no journal. Just sit with whatever comes up. Don't try to meditate. Don't try to think positive thoughts. Don't try to solve problems. Just be present with the experience of being present. Notice what happens. Notice the urges. Notice the discomfort. Notice the stories your mind tells about why this is stupid or impossible. And then notice what happens after the noise settles. What's underneath all that mental chatter? What's been waiting for you to finally pay attention? Are you willing to be uncomfortable for 10 minutes to discover who you really are? Are you willing to trade the familiar pain of distraction for the unfamiliar discomfort of presence? Most people aren't. They'll watch this video, feel inspired for 30 seconds, and immediately go back to scrolling. But if you're ready to meet yourself, really meet yourself, not the version you present to the world, but the person who exists when no one is watching, then you know what to do. Turn off the device. Sit in the silence. Let whatever happens, happen. Your authentic self has been waiting your entire life for this moment. The question is, are you finally ready to show up? The silence is waiting. Your transformation is waiting. Your real life is waiting. But it's only waiting in the boredom you're so afraid to embrace. What's it going to be? Now I want to hear from you. When was the last time you truly embraced boredom? When you sat doing nothing, without your phone, without distractions, for more than 10 minutes? And if you've never done this, are you willing to try today? Leave in the comments. I accept the boredom challenge if you're going to turn off your phone for 10 minutes today and discover what your mind has to tell you. Or if you've done this experience before, tell us. What did you discover about yourself in those silent moments? What emerged when you stopped running from yourself? Let's create a community of people brave enough to face their own silence. Write it. I accept the boredom challenge and tell me later what happened. And if this video made you uncomfortable in a good way, if it made you question your relationship with boredom, subscribe to the channel because we have much more to explore about how to reconnect with who you really are. Until the next video. And remember, turn off your phone. Do it now. Discover who you really are.